There's lie you've been told your entire life. A lie so deeply embedded in your thinking that you've built every major decision around it. Your career choice, your relationships, your definition of success, all shaped by this single deception. The lie is simple: more money equals more happiness. You know it's not true. Deep down, you've always known. You've seen the miserable millionaires, the depressed celebrities, the lottery winners who destroy their lives. But you still chase the next race, the bigger house, the luxury car, believing that this time, this amount will finally be enough. It won't be. And the truly terrifying part, the psychology behind money and happiness is far darker than you imagine. It's not just that money can't buy happiness. It's that money actively rewires your brain, corrupts your relationships, and systematically destroys the very sources of genuine well-being. I'm going to take you deep into the psychology of money today. Not the surface-level advice you've heard 1,000 times, but the disturbing research that reveals how money manipulates your mind. Why wealthy people often become worse human beings, and why our entire civilization might be built on a psychological trap we can't escape. This is going to get uncomfortable. Let's begin. Let me start with the most fundamental problem. Your brain is designed to make happiness through money impossible. In 1971, psychologists Philip Brickman, Dan Coates, and Ronnie Jenoff-Bullman conducted what would become one of the most famous studies in psychology. They interviewed lottery winners who had won major jackpots and people who had become paraplegics after accidents. The results shattered everything people believed about happiness. Within 1 year, lottery winners were no happier than they'd been before winning. Meanwhile, accident victims had returned almost to their baseline happiness levels, despite catastrophic life changes. The researchers called this phenomenon hedonic adaptation. Here's what's happening in your brain. When something good happens, when you get that promotion or buy that new car, your dopamine system fires. You experience pleasure, but this system evolved for survival, not for sustained happiness. Within weeks, sometimes days, you adapt. The new normal becomes boring. The pleasure fades, and you need something more to feel that spike again. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. Our ancestors who remained constantly thrilled with their current situation didn't strive for more food, better shelter, or safer environments. They didn't survive. Evolution selected for perpetual dissatisfaction, for a psychological system that gives you brief pleasure, followed by urgent craving for more. You are literally hardwired for perpetual wanting. The research on this is overwhelming. A meta-analysis examining the relationship between income and life satisfaction found that once you reach about $75,000 a year, adjusted for cost of living, additional income produces almost no increase in day-to-day happiness. Some recent studies push that number higher in expensive cities, maybe to 90 or 100,000. But the principle holds: Beyond sufficiency, money becomes psychologically inert. But here's where it gets darker. People don't stop at sufficiency. The average American thinks they need roughly 2 to 3 times their current income to be happy, regardless of what they currently earn. Someone making 50,000 thinks they need 150,000. Someone making 200,000 thinks they need 600,000. The target moves with you forever out of reach. You're not climbing a ladder to happiness. You're running on a treadmill designed to keep you running forever. But the hedonic treadmill is just the beginning. Money doesn't just fail to make you happy, it actively corrupts your ability to experience happiness. Let's talk about what psychologists call intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is doing something because it's inherently satisfying, reading because you love stories, creating because expression brings you joy, helping others because connection feels meaningful. These are the activities that produce genuine, lasting well-being. Extrinsic motivation is doing something for an external reward. Money, status, praise, avoiding punishment. And here's what decades of research show. Extrinsic motivation doesn't just coexist with intrinsic motivation. It poisons it. Edward Deci's famous experiments prove this. When you pay people to do activities they already enjoy, they lose interest in those activities. Children who love drawing stop drawing when you pay them for it. The activity transforms from play into work, from meaning into transaction. This is happening to you constantly. Every hobby you've considered monetizing, every passion you've tried to turn into a side hustle, every joyful activity you've analyzed through the lens of productivity or profit, money enters, meaning exits, but it goes deeper. Psychologist Tim Kasser spent decades studying people with strong materialistic values, people who prioritize financial success, image, and status above other life goals. His findings are disturbing. People with materialistic values are significantly more likely to experience depression, anxiety, and personality disorders. They have lower quality relationships, less empathy, and more dysfunctional coping strategies. They report lower life satisfaction, less vitality, and more physical health problems. Across dozens of studies, the pattern is consistent. Prioritizing money is directly correlated with psychological suffering. Why? Because materialism shifts your focus from intrinsic goods like relationships, personal growth, and community to extrinsic metrics that can never be satisfied. You're optimizing for the wrong variable. It's like training for a marathon, but measuring success by how expensive your running shoes are. You'll never reach the finish line because you're running in the wrong direction entirely. And here's the truly insidious part. Our entire economic system is built on cultivating this dysfunction. Advertising exists to make you dissatisfied with what you have. Social media amplifies comparison and envy. Consumer culture tells you that you are what you own. We've created a civilization-wide system designed to maximize unhappiness in order to maximize consumption. You're not failing to be happy, you're succeeding at being a perfect consumer. Now let's examine what money does to your relationships, because this is where things get truly dark. Paul Piff, a psychologist at UC Berkeley, conducted a series of studies on how wealth affects behavior. In one experiment, he positioned researchers at busy intersections to observe how drivers behaved at crosswalks. The finding was stark. Drivers of expensive cars were 4 times more likely to cut off other vehicles and 3 times more likely to fail to stop for pedestrians compared to drivers of cheaper cars. In another study, PIF had people play Monopoly with rigged rules. One player got twice as much money to start, collected twice as salary when passing go, and got to roll 2 dice instead of 1. The advantaged players, knowing the game was rigged in their favor, became noticeably more aggressive. They moved their pieces louder, smashed the dice harder, and displayed more dominant behavior. Most disturbingly, when asked afterward why they won, they credited their superior skill and strategy, not the massive structural advantages they'd been given. This is what psychologists call wealth-induced psychological distance. As people accumulate money, they become literally less able to empathize with others. Brain imaging studies show that wealthy individuals have reduced neural responses when viewing images of children with cancer compared to people of average income. Money dampens your capacity for compassion. Why does this happen? Several mechanisms are at play. First, wealth increases independence. When you can buy services, you need people less. You don't need to borrow a neighbor's tools, ask friends for help moving, or rely on community support. Each transaction replaces a relationship. Your social muscle atrophies. Second, money creates social barriers. Wealth stratification means you increasingly interact only with people like you. Your empathy becomes tribal. You can feel deeply for someone in your tax bracket, while remaining completely indifferent to the suffering of people you never interact with. Third, and perhaps most psychologically destructive, wealth creates what researchers call self-serving attribution bias on steroids. Most people have some tendency to credit success to their own abilities and blame failures on external circumstances. But wealth amplifies this dramatically. The rich increasingly believe they earned everything they have through merit alone, discounting luck, privilege, and structural advantages. This isn't just psychological. This manifests in measurably antisocial behavior. Studies consistently show that wealthier individuals are more likely to lie in negotiations, cheat to win prizes, endorse unethical behavior at work, and even take more candy from jars meant for children. That was an actual study. The data is clear. Money makes people worse. Not everyone, not in every circumstance, but on average, across populations, wealth correlates with reduced empathy, increased entitlement, and more selfish behavior. Your relationships are probably the most significant predictor of your happiness. Strong social connections, deep friendships, intimate partnerships. These are what produce lasting well-being. Money systematically undermines all of them. When money becomes your identity, but even if you resist the corruption, even if you maintain your empathy and relationships, there's another trap waiting. Money becomes your identity. Think about how you introduce yourself at parties. What do you do? Is usually code for how do you make money? Your career isn't just how you spend 40+ hours per week. It's who you are. And if your worth as a human is tied to your economic productivity, then your happiness becomes hostage to market forces entirely outside your control. Psychologists distinguish between having and being modes of existence. Having mode is focused on possession, accumulation, and external validation. Being mode is focused on experience, growth, and authentic expression. Money locks you into having mode. This creates a psychological trap. If your identity is constructed around your income, job title, and possessions, then any threat to these things becomes an existential threat to your sense of self. A job loss isn't just an economic setback, it's a destruction of identity. Retirement isn't freedom, it's obsolescence. Downshifting to pursue meaning feels like admitting failure. I've seen this destroy people. High-earning professionals who are utterly miserable but can't leave because I'm a lawyer or I'm a doctor has become so central to their identity that they can't imagine being anything else. They've built their entire self-concept on a career path chosen at 18, and now they're imprisoned by their own success. The research on job satisfaction reveals something disturbing. Many high-paying professions have remarkably low satisfaction rates. Corporate lawyers, investment bankers, and management consultants often report high levels of stress, depression, and regret despite enormous paychecks. Meanwhile, jobs with more autonomy, social contribution, and intrinsic rewards like teaching, social work, or skilled trades often report higher satisfaction despite lower pay. But people stay in the high-paying misery because they've confused their net worth with their self-worth. They are terrified that without money and status, they are nothing. This is reinforced by what sociologists call positional goods, things whose value comes not from what they provide, but from having more than others. A luxury car doesn't transport you significantly better than a reliable sedan. A mansion doesn't shelter you much better than a modest house. Designer clothes don't keep you warmer. The value is entirely relational. It's about hierarchy, about being above. And positional goods create a zero-sum game. Your gain is someone else's loss. There can never be enough because the value exists only in scarcity and comparison. You're competing in a race where the finish line is defined as being ahead of everyone else. It's mathematically impossible for everyone to win, which means most people must lose. So you've tied your identity to a game that ensures your suffering. Let's go deeper. There's a reason why people who have everything are often the most miserable. Because having everything means needing nothing, and needing nothing means having no purpose. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz, wrote that humans can endure almost any suffering if they have a why, a meaning that makes the suffering worthwhile. The wealthiest person with no purpose will be more miserable than the struggling person with a clear sense of meaning. This explains the epidemic of depression among the affluent. When your material needs are completely met, when you can buy anything you want, when there's no struggle, no challenge, no necessity, you confront the existential void. What's the point? Why am I here? What am I contributing? Money provides answers to how questions. How will I pay rent? How will I feed myself? How will I retire? But money never answers why questions. Why am I alive? Why does my existence matter? Why should I continue? And without answers to why, the hows become meaningless. This is what philosophers call existential vacuum. When your life lacks meaning, you try to fill the void with pleasure, with acquisitions, with achievements. But nothing fits. The void remains, and often it grows. The research on lottery winners bears this out. Beyond the hedonic adaptation, many winners report feeling lost. Their purpose had been reaching financial security, and once achieved, they don't know what to do with themselves. Some become depressed. Some destroy their windfalls through reckless spending or bad investments, unconsciously trying to recreate the struggle that gave them direction. Some even say they wish they'd never won. Meanwhile, some of the happiest people on earth live in communities with strong social bonds, clear cultural meaning, and shared purpose, regardless of material wealth. Traditional cultures, religious communities, and tight-knit societies often report higher life satisfaction than wealthy individualistic societies despite dramatically lower incomes. The uncomfortable truth is that meaning comes from struggle, growth, contribution, and connection. It comes from being part of something larger than yourself. It comes from working toward goals that matter. Money can't buy any of these things. In fact, by removing struggle and reducing dependence on others, money often destroys the very conditions that produce meaning. You're not unhappy because you need more money. You're unhappy because you need more meaning. And you're trying to buy your way out of a spiritual problem. So what do you do with all this? How do you escape the trap? First, recognize that you've been misled, not maliciously, but systematically. Every advertisement, every social media post, every cultural message tells you that happiness comes from external acquisition. It doesn't. Happiness comes from internal cultivation. The research on well-being points to several consistent factors. Strong relationships, particularly deep, authentic connections, where you're known and loved for who you are, not what you have. Physical health and regular movement, autonomy and control over your time, competence and growth in skills that matter to you, purpose and contribution to something beyond yourself, gratitude and appreciation for what you have. None of these require money beyond basic sufficiency. In fact, beyond that threshold, money often undermines them. So here's what actually works. Optimize for enough. Figure out the income level where your basic needs are comfortably met, where you're not stressed about bills or one emergency away from catastrophe. Then stop optimizing for more income and start optimizing for more autonomy, more meaning, more connection. This might mean choosing a lower paying job with better hours and more fulfilling work. It might mean downsizing your lifestyle to reduce financial pressure. It might mean prioritizing time with people you love over career advancement. These are countercultural choices, but they're backed by all the psychological research. Invest in experiences over possessions. Experiences, especially shared ones, produce lasting happiness. Possessions provide brief pleasure followed by adaptation. A vacation with friends creates memories that remain meaningful for years. A new gadget is boring within weeks. Cultivate gratitude practices. Your brain has negativity bias. constantly scanning for problems and threats. Gratitude practices, simply reflecting on what you appreciate, physically rewires your neural patterns toward noticing the good. This isn't toxic positivity. It's correcting a cognitive bias that evolved for survival but undermines well-being. Find purpose beyond yourself. Whether it's raising children, creating art, contributing to your community, advancing a cause you believe in, or mastering a craft, you need something that makes your existence meaningful beyond your own pleasure or comfort. And perhaps most importantly, disentangle your identity from your income. You are not your job. You are not your net worth. You are not your possessions. These are things you have or do, not who you are. Your worth as a human being is inherent, not earned through economic productivity. The dark psychology of money and happiness reveals something profound about human nature. We're meaning-seeking creatures trapped in a material world. We're social beings isolated by individualism. We're built for purpose but optimizing for pleasure. We're designed for connection but competing for status. The system won't change. There's too much profit in your unhappiness, too much power in your insecurity, too much wealth generated by your endless consumption. But you can change. You can recognize the trap. You can choose differently, not easily, not without sacrifice. You'll face pressure from family who don't understand why you're not maximizing income, judgment from peers who measure success in dollars, fear from the voice in your head that says you're falling behind. But on the other side of that fear is something real, genuine relationships, meaningful work, purpose that sustains you, freedom from the treadmill. The question isn't whether money can buy happiness. We know it can't. The question is, are you brave enough to stop trying? Are you willing to build a life based on what actually produces well-being, even if it looks like failure by society's corrupted standards? Because that's what it takes. The courage to define success on your own terms, the wisdom to distinguish between what you truly need and what you've been conditioned to want, the strength to choose meaning over money when they conflict. This is the path. It's narrow, it's countercultural, it's psychologically demanding. But it's the only way out of the darkness. The choice is yours. Choose wisely,